You know what I love? Spider-Man games. I'm obsessed with them. And one of the best things about Spider-Man games is that there's an absolute buttload of them. There have been over 85 unique video games focused on the webbed wall crawler. And that doesn't include team-up games like Marvel Ultimate Alliance or the Marvel vs. Capcom series. It would take someone months, years, decades even, to play every single game with Spider-Man in the title. And I'd know, because I have played almost all of them. From the towering heights of Neversoft's Spider-Man, Treyarch's Spider-Man 2, and Insomniac's Spider-Man PS4, to the drizzling shits of, Quest Probe featuring Spider-Man on the ZX Spectrum. I'm having fun. I've played the handheld games, I've played the mobile games, and I've even played the Japan-only Super Famicom title, The Amazing Spider-Man Lethal Foes. And you know what? Most of them are not good. But much like my thirst for blood, my hunger for interactive Spider-Man media can never truly be sated. In fact, one of the first games I ever covered on this channel was 1982's Spider-Man on the Atari 2600. I went all the way back to the very first Spider-Man game ever produced. And even then, when it felt like I was scraping the bottom of the web-spinning, wall-crawling barrel, there were further depths to plumb. Because there is one Spider-Man game so obscure, so lost to the annals of video game history, so entirely god-awful, that up until I started making this video, I didn't even know it existed. Hey heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels, and this is the worst Spider-Man game you've never even heard of. Marvel Comics Spider-Man: The Sinister Six is a 1996 PC game developed by Brooklyn Multimedia and published by Byron Preiss Multimedia. Byron Preiss was an American author and book publisher, and he was kind of a big name in the print world, but he was also recognised as a pioneer in digital publishing and one of the first people to embrace ebooks and books on CD-ROM. As part of the publisher's fearless foray into the digital age, Byron Preiss produced a number of interactive comics in the 1990s, based on original characters such as The Skull and The Suit, with contributions from popular comic book artists Ron Lim and Jimmy Palmiotti, as well as ex-Spider-Man editor Danny Fingeroth. In addition to this, the New York-based company also released PC games based on sci-fi properties such as Westworld, Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles, and Isaac Asimov's Robot City. And it was off the back of these licensed titles that Byron Preiss was able to acquire the rights to adapt Marvel Comics' flagship Fly Guy. Released for Windows 3.1, Windows 95, and DOS, Marvel Comics Spider-Man: The Sinister Six is a point-and-click adventure game along the lines of the old Sierra or LucasArts games, but with a choose-your-own-adventure branching path thing going on. A sort of Spider-Man-Bandersnatch, if you will.
Fair enough. See you around.
In it, you must play as both Spider-Man and Peter Parker to, as the box blurb promises, solve puzzles, blast through deadly combat sequences, and fight to save New York. But enough talk, have at you. You know, maybe I was wrong about this game. Maybe this is actually the best Spider-Man game ever created. I mean, with an intro like this, how could it not be? Oh, chef's kiss. 10 out of 10. The perfect start to a video game. What's next? Well, we're straight into the point-and-click action, as we're introduced to the story's main players. Mary Jane Watson, actress, model, and perennial girl next door. Chip Alvarez, hot-headed movie director and all-round bad bloke. And of course our hero, Peter Parker, who is visiting his then-wife Mary Jane on the set of her latest film.
I was kind of late. Sorry. I only saw a few seconds of it, but you were great, MJ. I don't know what his problem was, but believe me, watch out Sharon Stone.
And cut. No, that was good, yeah. Definitely a good first take, I would say. Just so we are clear though, Spider-Man, who you're voicing, he is the hero of the story. And I'm just a little concerned that you might be playing him too much like a creepy sex pest. Yeah. So, do you want to do another take? No? You want to use that one? Okay, yeah. I couldn't find much info online about Buster Maxwell, the voice actor behind our web-headed protagonist, beside this 10-year-old commercial reel that, okay, is actually pretty great, And who could forget his iconic role as racist steelworker? But let's just say Yuri Lowenthal he ain't. Still, we do get some nice dialogue between MJ and Peter, and we learn that Chip Alvarez is a student of the Bryan Singer / Brett Ratner / Joss Whedon School of Directing. Allegedly.
Look, I'm the boss. It's my way or the highway. I've got a file cabinet filled with pictures of sexy redheads. Get my point?
Buddy, what you got up to in your own time is really none of my business. So, after a lot of chin-wagging, we head up to the roof, where preparations are being made to shoot a big stunt scene. I'm not really sure what the stunt is supposed to be, but there's a safety net and a harness, and I think somebody's supposed to jump off a building. What could go wrong? Suddenly, the distant whine of police sirens triggers Peter's spider sense, and we find ourselves at our first branching path. Stay on the rooftop in case something goes wrong with the stunt, or follow the police to a nearby bank robbery. I chose the latter, and was soon met with the game's first puzzle section. The puzzles in this game are pretty neat, if a little basic, but you can ramp up the difficulty in the main menu. Now, when this game first released, a lot of reviewers complained about how tedious these stages can be. But I don't know, man, cryptograms, logic puzzles, that type of stuff is extremely my jam. Shortly thereafter, you will be introduced to Bob Mason, a loudmouth mayoral candidate whose role in the story appears to be as some kind of J. Jonah Jameson surrogate.
Gangs intimidate and threaten the innocent, and don't rely on the so-called superheroes like Spider-Man, who actually stand by, and in some instances even help criminals take control of the city.
I suppose this is notable because it predates JJJ actually running for mayor of New York in Amazing Spider-Man issue 591 by a good 13 years. But it's a shame that the developers weren't able to use more of Spider-Man's supporting cast, and had to resort to creating original characters. This game clearly has a good understanding of the Spider-Man mythos. I really can't fault the characterization of Peter so far, even if the execution is a little corny. The game's writer and designer F.J. Lennon was no stranger to the world of the Webhead and the wider Marvel Universe, having previously contributed to earlier superhero titles such as 1989's X-Men and 1990's The Amazing Spider-Man. Lennon clearly knows his comic books, and the game is surprisingly faithful to the source material. Even the character designs for the Sinister Six reflect what was going on in comics at the time, albeit with a lineup that is heavily influenced by the 90s Spider-Man cartoon's more well-known version of the Insidious Six. Hobgoblin rocks the super creepy Eric Larson designed, vaguely reptilian look, although here he looks more like his face is made out of pie crust. Meanwhile, the Vulture sports his updated 90s ensemble, including a sweet mullet and rejuvenated body, which, as we all know, he gained by absorbing the artificial life force of an android who was posing as Peter Parker's mother. God, I love 90s comics so much. Back in the game, it looks like Chip, MJ, and the rest of the crew are shooting a scene involving a bus. But surprise, the Vulture has rigged the bus so that if the revs drop below a certain level, it will explode. Meanwhile, somebody posing as Spider-Man has webbed the doors closed, meaning that Peter must work to free Mary Jane before the bus runs out of gas. So basically, it's speed. They're doing a speed thing. I guess that was a pretty timely reference in 1996. Either way, we get another moderately challenging puzzle in which we must recreate a formula that will dissolve imposter Spidey's webbing.
It's gonna blow!
I have to say, I'm not hating this so far, but look out, Hobgoblin is here, and he's brought with him our first combat encounter. The action stages in the game can be broken down into two categories. You're either shooting oncoming projectiles with your web by pointing and clicking, or you're moving the mouse to avoid pumpkin bombs, lasers, or mechanical octopus arms. The click to shoot stuff isn't the best, but it just about works. The dodging, however, is possibly the most broken mechanic I've ever encountered in any video game, and I platinumed Avengers. Dodging with the mouse just straight up does not work. I don't know if it's too sensitive or not sensitive enough, but Spidey neither moves where you want nor expect him to go. At first, I wondered if this was just a problem on my end. Maybe my mouse was set up wrong for the game, or maybe it was an emulation issue. But no, everything I found about this game, every review by actual professional games journalists of the time, every playthrough I've watched online suggests that it really is this bad. I just can't express to you how atrociously awful this is. The mouse might as well not even be plugged in. In fact, I think I did have it unplugged for a while, and Spidey still just jumped around aimlessly, getting pelted with pumpkin bombs. This is legitimately one of the most frustrating things I've ever put myself through. But I want to. No, I need to see what the rest of the game has to offer.
And eventually, relying on a strategy of just waving my mouse around at random and hoping that through sheer chance I could evade just enough projectiles, with just enough of my health bar left over at the end, I could progress to the next stage. And after many, many, many attempts like this, I did it. I finally beat it. I could take a deep breath and enjoy whatever the game next had in store for me, safe in the knowledge that it couldn't possibly get any worse. I'd like to talk to you about this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creative and curious people like you. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and most importantly, get inspired. There are literally thousands of classes on there, from illustration, graphic design, animation, video editing, photography, music, and so much more. Recently, I've been getting really into toy and action figure photography because I'm a massive dweeb apparently. But the truth is, I'm a very amateur photographer. So I just went straight to Skillshare and I brushed up on the fundamentals of DSLR photography with Justin Bridges. This crash course gives you everything you need to know about all that confusing stuff like shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, so that you can take the stunning professional photos you've always dreamed of. What I really love about Skillshare is the combination of video lessons, which are great for visual learners like me, plus the class projects that encourage you to get creative and put your new skills into practice. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads and they're always launching new premium classes, so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. Sounds good, right? Well, the good news is the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description below this video will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So whether you're a beginner, a pro, a dabbler, or a master, Skillshare has the tools you need to explore your creativity. Thanks, on with the show. Back in the game, and after a lot of failing, reloading, and having to watch the same game over cutscene so many times, it was time for Peter Parker, or rather me, to make another choice. Should I go to Chip Alvarez's party at the top of the World Club with MJ, or should I blow her off to appear on television in costume to clear Spidey's name? Posing these kinds of conundrums is, in my opinion, the game's greatest strength. Spider-Man the Sinister Six was the first ever game to let you play as both Peter Parker and his red and blue alter ego. And the fact that these branching paths often come down to choosing between Peter's best interests or Spider-Man's, to my mind, that really cuts to the core of what the character is all about.
The best Spider-Man stories are those in which the line gets blurred between the two sides of Peter Parker's double identity. The choices he makes as Spider-Man affect his life as Peter Parker, and vice versa, often with grave consequences. The only thing that comes close to reflecting this in a video game is 2008's Spider-Man Web of Shadows, with its symbiote-based morality system. But I'd argue that most of the decision-making in that game came down to either acting like a well-adjusted, functioning member of society, or being a huge, whiny, narcissistic dickhole.
Anyway, I chose to go to the party, because after all of that unpleasantness in the alleyway, I needed to let my hair down. While I was there, I enjoyed schmoozing with some not so subtly concealed superheroes, like Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, and Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. Eventually, after deciphering an encrypted note, we meet Dmitry Smerdyakov, otherwise known as Chameleon, the Russian master of disguise, who threatens Peter Parker as a way of getting to Spider-Man.
Betray me, and you might be looking at this one day very soon.
Wow, that was a lot more graphic than I thought it would be.
Chameleon reveals that the Sinister Six are holed up at V-Motion Virtual Reality headquarters, because this is the 90s after all, before making a hasty exit.
Fair enough. See you around.
Oh man, I could watch these cheesy web-swinging scenes all day.
V-Motion virtual reality? It must be new. Why would the Sinister Six be involved in virtual reality? I thought VR was only used in games at the mall arcades. What does Dr. Octopus have up his sleeve this time?
Over at V-Motion, Spidey wheels his way up an infinite elevator shaft, while Dr. Octopus gets a little handsy.
How does it feel to be despised, as we are despised?
Wait a minute, I think you have me confused with OJ.
Holy shit, 1996 was way too soon to be making O.J. Simpson jokes in a Spider-Man game for children. What the hell?
Otto gives his villain speech, laying out plans to disgrace Spider-Man and achieve world domination, and after some legitimately good quippy back and forth, we get another action sequence. As the room fills with poisonous gas, Spidey must shoot out a ceiling fan to, stop the gas, let more air in. The fan's already on, so I'm not really sure what the objective is here. All I know is you have to web shoot these little red dots. Except, the mouse doesn't aim where you want it to, and there's a half-second lag every time you click. So it's another case of just spamming that mouse button and hoping for the best. Fearing for Mary Jane's safety, Spidey heads to the movie set, where he finds that both Chip Alvarez and Bob Mason have been kidnapped by the Sinister Six. Back at V-Motion, Bob Mason protests that he is being forced to run for mayor as part of Doc Ock's plan to defame Spider-Man. You can choose to believe him or not. I chose not to because why would I? But as it turns out, I'm a terrible judge of character. Mason was telling the truth. Spidey's nefarious nasties arrive just in time to open up a six-pack of whoop-ass, and...
Okay, I'll give you one more chance to surrender.
Spider-Man, murderer. That's the shocking story that has stunned New York and the world at large.
My career as Spider-Man is over. The damage is too great. I can't redeem myself. It's just like Uncle Ben all over again. A bad decision on my part leads to death.
So, I guess that was the bad ending.
So it seems like there's actually several achievable endings, ranging from the most depressing to only somewhat depressing, in which you save almost everybody except for Chip Alvarez, whose brains get turned into jelly by a virtual reality demon.
I'm not going to rest until Dr. Octopus is behind bars.
You need to focus your attention on something else. Like me.
A man just died, Mary Jane. Can you keep it in your pants, please?
The so-called good ending has you teaming up with a repentant Shocker to take down the rest of the Sinister Six, save Alvarez from the perils of VR, and get home just in time to canoodle with your sex-crazed wife.
This part of the superhero biz ain't so bad.
Now, on the plus side, this offers the game a lot of replayability. But on the minor side, nobody in their right mind would ever want to play this game multiple times. Are you nuts?
In a 1997 review of the game, German magazine PC Player wrote, "The controls for some of the action sequences are clearly some of the worst that can be found on the gaming market at the moment." Adding that, disseminating such goods should, in my opinion, be made a criminal offence. No holding back there, but Computer Gaming World's assessment wasn't much kinder, positing that the graphics are jagged, the story weak, the puzzles laughable, and the action sequences so dismal, so minor, so clumsy, so basic, so dull, so Atari 2600 as to defy comment.
I think it's fair to say that Spider-Man: The Sinister Six was met with indifference by those who even bothered to play it in the first place, and the game was soon consigned to the bargain bins of history.
There were plans for a sequel titled Spider-Man: The Venom Factor, as hinted at on the game's official website. You can still access that site through the Wayback Machine, and it's surprisingly comprehensive and well designed for the mid-90s. I probably had more fun clicking around on there than I did actually playing the game. A few years later, Byron Preiss sadly died in a road accident aged 52, leading his publishing company to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy the following year. And that was it. Marvel Comics' Spider-Man: The Sinister Six was almost entirely forgotten, an often overlooked footnote in the webbed wallcrawler's video game history.
In fact, I started writing this video back in 2017, and at the time there were basically no other videos about this game on YouTube. And yes, it has taken me 4 years to finish this video, hence why there are so many Bandersnatch references. Those were very topical at one point. My friend Matty over at the Game Show, he talks a lot about old PC games on his channel, and he always points to the fact that no matter how ugly, unplayable, and thoroughly unenjoyable these games can be, the fact is that nobody ever sets out to make a bad game. Whether it's due to budgetary constraints, time restrictions, resources, staff, whatever it might be, sometimes the fact that a finished product even exists, that a game even got out of the door and onto store shelves, is an accomplishment in itself. And there's a natural tendency to be cynical about a game like this, especially on the internet, where outrage has become a cheat code for engagement. Negativity breeds clicks. I know that. Hell, just look at how I titled this video. The worst Spider-Man game you've never heard of. I mean, it's probably technically accurate, but still, I don't want to just completely dump on this game.
While Spider-Man the Sinister Six lacks the story depth and sense of exploration inspired by the likes of Grim Fandango or the Monkey Island series, I do think Spider-Man is a good fit for the point-and-click adventure genre. There's an argument to be made here that Byron Preiss was one of the first people to make a connection between comic book storytelling and dialogue-focused adventure games, something that would later be explored to much greater success by developers like Telltale Games, with their popular Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, and Batman titles. In today's world of digital comics, it's easy to take something like this for granted. But in 1996, this was a century-old print medium being dragged kicking and screaming towards the new millennium. And look, if nothing else, Marvel Comics' Spider-Man the Sinister Six is exactly the kind of 90s superhero schlock that gives me life.
Is it a good game? Absolutely not. Am I glad it exists? Absolutely I am. Will I keep bringing it up in every conversation about Spider-Man games to make sure that it never gets forgotten about? You bet your tiny tuchus I will.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and you want to see more stuff like this, subscribe to Panels to Pixels. And don't forget to give that bell icon a little ring-a-ding-ding so you never miss out on future videos. I'm inching ever closer towards 50,000 subscribers, which would just be such an incredible milestone to hit. So I really appreciate you taking the time to support the channel. Alright heroes, hit that thumbs up button, drop me a comment down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!